Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3811a, and today's date is January 5th, 2026. The title of the episode is You're Witnessing the Dismantling of the Central Bank. The debt is in violation of the Constitution. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see slowly but surely what is Trump doing. He's basically dismantling the central bank system, slowly but surely. And in the end, once Trump has all the leverage and he has the tariff system working against the central bank system, he has the control of oil where he can bring the oil prices way, way down, you're going to see that Trump now is going to be weaning us off the central bank system. The central bank system is going to lose all their power. And we could see that, yes, he has now freed Venezuela. Yes, there's still individuals inside Venezuela, but eventually what's going to happen is Venezuela is going to be working with the United States, and we're going to see many, many changes. Think about why the deep state players, the central bankers, have created these countries where the United States placed sanctions on these countries, but kept these people in position, but actually didn't use the oil from these countries and allow the oil prices to continually rise over time and have one central location like OPEC control the price of oil. This way they can control the petrodollar system. Now Trump is reversing all of this and actually taking control and actually getting more and more leverage as time goes on, so he can basically compete and then beat the central bank system and then dismantle the central bank system. And that's what we're witnessing right now. And as this happens, what happens? The alternative currency, which is gold, silver, Bitcoin, that's going to continually move up and up and up to compete against the fiat currency. Basically, when the central bank came into existence, Trump now is doing everything that they did when they came into existence, and he's just reversing it step by step. Just like when they came into power, they went ahead and they removed the tariff system. Then all of a sudden they placed taxes on the wealthy, and then it was the upper middle class, then the middle class, lower middle class. Trump is just doing everything in reverse right now at a very, very accelerated rate. And soon we're going to see everything start to change. And think about it, when the central bank system went full fiat in the 70s, they had to remove the manufacturing in this country. All the oil was out in the Middle East and Venezuela and Iran, many other places. And they had to control the price of oil. They had to keep it up. They couldn't allow it to be 20 cents a gallon. Because again, they knew their system over time, what would happen? There'd be inflation and they would have to raise the oil prices. They couldn't allow the oil prices to stay low. Because again, they had to prop up their petrodollar system. Now Trump is reversing all of this, and he's taking control over the oil market. Actually, when he tells OPEC, hey, listen, increase production, you know what they do? They increase production, which is very, very interesting, which actually lowers the price. He's doing this right now because he's preparing the United States to drill. Why do you think they never wanted to drill for oil in the United States? It's not like we don't have oil. We have tons of oil. But why didn't they want to do that? Because that would add more capacity, which means the prices would go way, way down. Now Trump is basically setting the stage, setting everything up to bring down the private West Central Bank system. And when you look at Venezuela, they hold about 303 billion barrels of oil reserves. Much of this is heavy crude oil. Cobisia Letter and X put this out and said, Texas and Louisiana also happen to have 6 of the largest heavy crude oil refineries in the world. What does this mean? In the early 2000s, Venezuela was much larger oil producer than the U.S. In fact, Venezuela produced 3 times as much oil at nearly 3.3 million barrels per day. By 2020, Venezuela's production had declined to just 900,000 a day, while the U.S. hit 5 million a day. This is key. Venezuela has been heavily sanctioned by the U.S. for years. This resulted in old infrastructure hindering the ability to extract heavy crude oil. Heavy oil is far more expensive to extract than light crude. This requires advanced techniques like steam injection. The image below helps to better understand. Shows vials of very thick oil and very light colored oil, and basically it shows you the difference between the two. The U.S. has become incredibly dependent on heavy crude oil. In 1980, just 10 to 20% of U.S. crude oil imports were heavy crude oil. Today, the majority of U.S. crude oil imports are heavy crude oil at approximately 70%. The U.S. wants more heavy crude, and Venezuela has billions of barrels of it. Now, take a look at crude oil imports to the U.S. Canada's share of imports has surged from 15 to 60% of U.S. imports. Meanwhile, Venezuela's imports to the U.S. have effectively stalled. If the U.S. can restore these imports, it would be highly profitable for the U.S. government. Currently, Venezuela holds more oil reserves than any other country in the world. They even hold 20% more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. What's the best way to restore these massive heavy crude oil imports to the U.S.? Take control of the country's oil reserve. And that's exactly what Trump has done right now. And it becomes even more strategic for the U.S. Aside from Venezuela, Russia has some of the largest heavy crude oil reserves in the world. Tapping into Venezuela's heavy crude oil reserves effectively further weakens Russia's influence. This is also a geopolitical move. To top it all off, China is the largest buyer of Venezuelan oil. This accounts for approximately 5% of China's total annual oil imports. As the U.S. gains control of Venezuela, this gives President Trump even more control over China. Trump said he would sell some of this oil to China. So you could see right now, Trump now is battling the deep state players. He is now removing everything the central bankers, the deep state players have put into place. And now you could see that everything's about to change. And again, it gives him leverage over Canada, gives him leverage over Russia, gives him leverage over China. And we're able to produce a lot of oil, which is actually going to bring down the prices. That is what we're going to experience, which is going to be absolutely amazing. Now, the other thing that's absolutely amazing is that the U.S. has secured silver smelter deal to process latent metals. So this is very, very interesting. The U.S. Department of War announced investment of over $2 billion for a U.S. smelter to process critical minerals such as silver and more. What will be a $7 billion plus total build. This is the first such facility since the 70s to be built to process concentrates. Echo put this out and said, less than 24 hours after U.S. military pressure escalated in Venezuela, something far more telling happened. The infrastructure was already in place. The United States quietly locked in a strategic silver smelter deal designed to process up to $1 trillion in Latin American precious metals, including Venezuela's supply. Let that sink in. An $8 billion state-of-the-art facility, jointly backed by the Wall Street Capital and the U.S. Department of Defense, or U.S. Department of War, now sits at the center of the supply chain. This isn't about an invasion. This is about control, security, price discovery, physical metals moving out of unstable regions, refining brought back under U.S. oversight, paper markets losing influence, strategic metals secured for energy defense, and AI when governments build first and explain later. It's not speculation, it's preparation. Silver isn't being hyped, it's being positioned. And that's absolutely true. Gold is being positioned. Silver is being positioned. Oil is being positioned to work against the central bank system. Remember, the central bank put everything into place so they can control the world's economy. They can control the creation of currency. And they needed to prop up their currency by controlling everything that you see. They had to control gold with the paper markets. They had to control silver with the silver paper markets. They had to try to control Bitcoin Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. By having ETFs and dumping ETFs to try to bring the price down, telling people that criminals use cryptocurrency. They tried to do all of these things to control it. They centralized oil in the Middle East. They created OPEC to centralize the control of all of this. And now it's all completely and utterly falling apart. Think about what Trump is doing right now. He's basically, instead of centralization, he's decentralizing everything. Now there's gold. Now there's silver. Now there's Bitcoin, which is now going to be decentralized, and the central bankers are going to be losing control over this. Oil is going to be decentralized. The central banks will be losing control over this. And as we move forward, the tariff system is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger as the central bank gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And like we said from the very, very beginning, all this debt that we've been accumulating, well, it looks like it's in violation of the Constitution. I wouldn't be surprised in the end if Trump starts to look into the Fed and look at what has been going on. And I do believe this is why the fraud has been brought out to the public, to show people, look, all of this was done against the Constitution. And if it was done against the Constitution, do we truly owe all of this debt back to the central bank system? Or do we owe a small portion of the debt that actually goes along with the Constitution? Because the Constitution is the rule, the law of the land. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, we've taken in and will soon be receiving more than $600 billion in tariffs. But the fake news media refuse to talk about it because they hate and disrespect our country and want to interfere with the upcoming tariff decision, one of the most important ever of the United States Supreme Court. Because of tariffs, our country is financially and from a national security standpoint far stronger and more respected than ever before. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump. And yes, the tariff system is going to continually grow. And yes, there's a very, very important decision that the Supreme Court's going to have to make. But I do believe when they look back in time, they're going to see that, yes, there were precedents that were set in the past. We had certain presidents, which Trump calls them the tariff men. They used tariffs to enrich this country. So it's not like Trump just came up with it. This has been used going back in time. So once again, we can see that this is very, very different right now. And I do believe the Supreme Court is going to rule in Trump's favor. Now, like we said before, it looks like the debt that we've been taking on, it might be, and I do believe it is, in violation of our Constitution. Peter Sang-Ong explains, the 10th Amendment says the federal government can only do things expressly listed in the Constitution. Every other federal activity is illegal. And here's the list in its entirety. Number 1, mint gold and silver, not paper money. Establish citizenship rules. Number 3, post offices and post roads. Number 4, bankruptcy, counterfeiting, piracy laws. Number 5, patent and copyrights. Number 6, regulate commerce with foreign nations between states and with native tribes. 7, declare war, maintain army, navy, and militia. 8, establish lower federal courts. 9, exercise authority over Washington, D.C. That means roughly 80% of federal spending is, in fact, illegal. So all these programs, everything that they put into place is completely and utterly illegal. And on top of that, since that all violates the Constitution, we also need to look into basically what the Federal Reserve has been doing and what criminal activity they've been involved with, which means I do believe in the end that we're going to see that all this debt that they say we owe, we really don't owe. And I do believe Trump is going to end up paying off the debt that we do owe, and the central bank system will cease to exist the way we know it today, and it'll be restructured into the Treasury. And you have to remember, he needs to put all these things in place first, because again, just like when the central bank came into existence, they had to put all of their things into place to take over from the tariff system, because before the central bank system, what were we using? We were using a tariff system to fund the government. People weren't paying income tax. All the money was coming in externally. So what did the central bank have to do? Well, first, they came into existence. Woodrow Wilson signed them into law in the middle of, the evening during the holiday season of Christmas, around that time period, and all of a sudden the central bank was born. And then slowly but surely, what did they do? They started to implement everything. They started to change the Constitution. They implemented the Federal Reserve Act to establish the Federal Reserve, which is actually a private corporation outside of the U.S. government. They implemented the IRS. Why? They needed that to collect taxes. They started the narrative, letting everyone know that we're only going to tax the rich. And everyone said, this is incredible. Let's just tax the rich. Let the rich people pay for it. But it was a gigantic trick. And over time, what happened? Everyone had to pay taxes. As they were doing this, they were slowly weaning us off the tariff system. They were removing the tariffs. And eventually, once we had no tariffs, the central bank system came into power. People were paying taxes. People were now enslaved to the central bank system. Then in the 40s, after World War II, we became the reserve currency because, again, it was the UK as the reserve currency. Their system was crashing. They couldn't take it any further, so they had a reset. That's why they had a war. And now we are the reserve currency. As time went on, what happened? Their plan was to remove us from the gold standard. That happened in the 70s. We were removed from the gold standard. We went full fiat. The central bank took full control. 2008, the central bank took complete and utter control of the entire system. Interest rates, stock market, you name it. They control it all. And they were planning to bring us into the Great Reset, the Green New Scam. That was their plan. Remember, they're very patient. They knew it would take a long time because it's very hard to convince people, hey, listen, let's go off the gold standard. Let's go full fiat. The people wouldn't accept that. Hey, how about everyone pay taxes? No one would accept that either. So they had to do it very, very slowly. So if you look at this, Trump is just reversing everything that they have done. And he's doing exactly what the central bank did when they came into existence, but he's just doing it in reverse. And I do believe in the end, as he takes control over the oil, takes control of the money coming into this country, takes control of the crypto market, and I don't mean he's going to be controlling it. I'm just saying it's going to make it so the deep state players can't manipulate anything. As gold and silver continually moves up and up and up, it's going to reflect on what the fiat currency actually is. It's a worthless piece of paper. And I do believe in the end what Trump is going to do is he's waiting for the right moment, the right time. You don't want to mention gold too soon. You don't want to mention the Constitution too soon. And once gold hits a certain price, I do believe all of a sudden we're going to have audits of Fort Knox and many other areas to see how much gold we have. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a lot more gold than people could ever imagine. And with the new value of gold, because right now it's valued at what, $42 an ounce? Once we show that it's 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, 12,000, well, that gives him a lot of leverage. Take cryptocurrency, take silver, take gold, put that all together and think about it. We just mentioned that a new smelter plant is coming online. You could see that everything is going to be changing. And basically, this will all be used. Put it all together. Gold, silver, cryptocurrency, oil, the tariff system, the gold card, technology sales, the sale of energy. This will be a powerhouse system, and the central bank system will look like a very weak little system that nobody wants, because you have to remember, the tariff system is an income system. The central bank is a borrowing debt system. Trump is going to be bringing in currency externally. The central bank basically takes and robs the people of their hard-earned labor. So you're going to see a very, very big change as we move forward. And Trump is positioning all of this. And as you watch this happen, The central bank is being dismantled right in front of your eyes. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and it's supposed to be prepared. Thanks a lot.